Hi, and welcome to another episode of Raw Green, a show produced by Obi, your sustainability consultancy specializing in life cycle assessment, research, and green tech. Check us out at oneobi.com or connect with us on socials. Links are ready for you in the description. Ciao!
I think you invited me here under false pretenses, but you did tell me to bring wine, Francesco, so I have turned up. Locked and loaded.
We're turning Raw Green into the Graham Norton show, basically.
Yeah, we're going to have... Just promise me we can lie about the time of the day it is.
It's not going to be disclosed in the final edit.
No. This was my idea, right? I will own this one. This was me suggesting to you that, you know, when we're doing all of our interviews and we're talking to these wonderful clean tech founders, we're really grilling them and we're like throwing loads of questions at them and they're taking the stage naturally. That's great. But it always leaves us, you and I, talking through these sort of fun, interesting bits, the critiques slightly and all the other things that have been like sparking off while we've been listening to them talking. We do that normally once we've stopped recording. And I was just thinking that this is a lovely opportunity to sort of have that conversation where we can like talk openly and frankly about some of the things that we've heard and share more information around some of the stuff that they're doing and really just sort of like bottom it out. So we've done 3 now, haven't we, together? 3?
Yes, we have. Yeah.
So we've had Christoph from Naked Energy.
Yes.
We've had Joyita
from
Samudra Oceans.
Yeah.
And we've had Ed from Carbogenics.
Yes.
3 completely different things.
Completely different things. And I do agree with you. The brainstorming sessions that we do with them before the recording to learn more about them, obviously their technology, sometimes should be the episode, because there is that first approach. There isn't that recording light on top of the screen that maybe, I don't know, can be...
Oh, no, it definitely does.
Intimidate.
Yeah, it does.
For lack of... It does? No.
It does.
You're a natural. Don't say that.
I'm ruder off screen, you know that. But anyway, listen, you know that all of this stuff, obviously, we do this with AI these days. AI's got some fabulous software that would, plug 3 podcasts in and give you a kind of a wonderful, articulate discussion where it compares the merits and the similarities of all of these different technologies and kind of, draws conclusions from all of them. It does it really well. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking that the best thing that we can do to be not AI is to be a bit shit.
Well, we can excel at that.
Then there's no accusations of doing it in a lazy fashion, right?
No,
it's just you, me, and wine.
Yeah. Oh, good Lord. Let's see if we're going to publish this.
So what should we do? Should we talk about one at a time?
Okay, we can talk about those 3, but there are a couple of news that I read today that I really would like to have a quick chat with you about it. The first one, one is the opposite to the other for some reason, for several reasons actually. I read this morning on the news that China has it's starting to oblige the manufacturers from 3 different industries, which are steel, cement, and polysilicon, to buy between 25 and 70% of their energy demand from green energy, from green electricity. Okay. We're talking about steel and cement. Just those. I mean, it is absolutely incredible. And then data centers, I'm talking about now, year 2025 and year 2026, calendar year 25 and 26. And the most incredible one, it is data centers. So with all this rush of AI that it is like parsley everywhere, they are obliging data center companies for 2025 and 2026 to buy 80% of their energy demand from green sources.
Right. So there's a lot of stuff about data centers at the moment, and everything I seem to pick up seems to talk about this. But of course, data centers are brand new on the horizon, which means the energy sources that they're going to have to power them with need to be both significant and new, which is great. I mean, obviously, China, it is still rolling out some coal-fired power stations. It is still doing that here, there, and everywhere. But in terms of being able to draw a line in the sand and say new energy sources that are required for these things need to be green. And by the way, there's a big question mark over this, because you could say the same about America. America is at least investing in what some consider green, if you count nuclear fission in there, because they've actually massively ramped up the amount of investment. It seems to be the one bit of technology or energy tech that Trump is letting slip through at the moment. And if you want to class that as green, some do, because it's obviously low carbon to some extent, then that's a very much a global picture. The companies that are building these data centers are absolutely instrumental with regards to their purchasing power agreements that they're put in place, which is obviously really just designing the system from the ground up. So I love it. I'm seeing all sorts of new investments coming through on things like geothermal, which is nice. I feel like that almost died a death in the news, geothermal, at least. Yes. So that's quite exciting. And nuclear fusion. That actually is really taking off. I saw news on that this week as well, in conjunction with data centers, because of course it's vast amounts of investment into new energy structures. But there's not just one or two different types of fusion reactors that are in development at the moment. There's about 16 or so, and they're all receiving huge amounts of investment, both in the States and elsewhere in the world. And I think data centers are sort of like pushing that agenda massively.
Well, you have that off-taker, right? When you're developing that size of power plants, if you know that 50-60% of the capacity is going to be absorbed by one client only, and you can put that into your business plan, that it is a major plus, especially given all the risks and the pain in the bum that there are at the moment with connection to the grid. So if you have that, definitely helps. With your BPD. I love geothermal. I am a huge fan of deep geothermal, because that opens up energy from all around the world. Sorry, I started to use my hands like an Italian, but that
things are falling off the walls.
Yeah. Flies are dying. Yeah. That basically makes energy accessible to everybody. Or doesn't matter where you are in the world. Deep geothermal, you go down 10, 12, 13 kilometers, and you be able to access the most abundant form of programmable source of energy.
But of course, the technology that has been developed to be able to do that well now has come from the fracking industry.
No, there is one that is coming from the fracking industry, and that's why geothermal, it is not on the bad boy list from President Trump, because that it is a natural consequence of the fossil fuel industry, right? We have all that know-how and technology, which is a fantastic way. Rather than seeing as the only good guy, you should see that as the way out for the fossil industry and work on that and develop that. But no, that would be crazy to do. The deep geothermal, the other one, it is a company that I am particularly in love with, which is Quaise Energy, the plasma one, that they met the plasma laser to basically make this 12 kilometers, 13 kilometers deep hole. And that is absolutely incredible. They're going on trial now. That's fantastic.
That sounds scary. It's a big ball of plasma that basically just dissolves through the earth and keeps on going. Yeah, well, good luck in Australia.
Oh, see you in Australia.
Pops out the other side and keeps going. Interesting.
Right.
Scary.
Shall we talk about one of the tech that we know, or do you have something more important?
No, I mean, I just wanted to revisit your point on steel as well, particularly in China. I don't know the details of this, like some policy wonks out there will, but I bet you it's got something to do with the tariffs. There will be fewer tariffs on green steel. And of course, again, the technologies is just another example of the story here, that the technology is already in operation. Concrete and cement, not so sure. I don't know what that looks like. It doesn't travel so well easily, and you've obviously got the actual CO2 emissions from the chemical.
Also, the manufacturing capacity. China has incredible overabundance of manufacturing capacity for renewables and batteries. So the government's promised support to the Chinese government promised support to Chinese manufacturers in renewables, whether it's solar, wind, or batteries. Because they have so much stock on hand at the moment that they need to get it out. And you talk about steel and cement, we're talking about crazy energy requirements. So it does make sense. That is the thing that I love about China, to be honest. You can say whatever you want. You can say whatever you want about China. Unfair trade practices and very little maybe labor legislation. You can say whatever you want, but when they decide to do something, they go all in and they do it. That's it. Head on, work hard, do it. Full stop.
And they're getting shit done. They're getting it shit done with EVs. They're leading the way on all these things. But I think this is the underlying story here, isn't it? Is that this shit's getting done all over the place. It's not really headline news so much anymore, because this is now just business. The renewable energy and the green factor is sort of almost dissolved away to it now just being cost effective and technologically, superior in many ways, and off we go. It's exactly where we wanted to be. That's exciting.
I mean, this is not a political podcast, but that makes you question if democracy works.
Everyone's questioned democracy since it was invented as the best of a bad situation, wasn't it? It's not in good light at the moment, that's for sure.
On the other side of the coin, the US had horrible tragedy during the 4th of July weekend.
Oh my God, in Texas.
The Texas flood, yes.
Horrendous.
And coming back home yesterday, I was hearing on the news the White House speaker vehemently attacking anybody who questioned that this was President Trump's fault for cutting down on various federal agencies, weather forecasting services, and whatnot. I'm not going to judge on that, but there was a wonderful article of Michael Bloomberg today on Bloomberg saying it is time that elected officials are held accountable when this kind of things happens. Nobody's held accountable for anything. Nobody is responsible for anything. And that it is an exemplification of how things should be. You are the governor, you are the mayor, you are the senator, you are whatever you are, the member of the parliament for that particular jurisdiction. You are responsible for that. It is in your mandate given to you by the same people. So I was particularly shocked to see the two sides. It was in the space of a few hours. One, you have China, that it is hammering down, obviously, with their problems of a number of different levels. And on the other, you have a country that it is still the number one country in the world, but that it is stepping a foot back into the Middle Age with their policymaking. Was it too deep?
That was, I mean,
was it depressing?
That's pretty deep, and I could go off in a whole different diatribe now about how I don't believe the federal government in the States is actually in the process of governing. I don't think they have any intention to govern. I think that's why they just cut hundreds of thousands of people off Medicaid and generally are just pulling up drawbridges around themselves and their global elite and just cutting people free. They are not clearly in the business of saving lives, protecting people, investing in defences and continuing to build resilience in the world that we're about to face, let alone mitigating against any of it. So I think, hold them to account, sure, but take a ticket for the queue, right?
Yes. Look, why don't we talk about something happy? So this week is the last week of Wimbledon. the tennis
Right.
tournament. And there is one particular company, both you and I had the pleasure to have their CEO here on Raw Green, that installed their technology on Wimbledon structures and facilities, Naked Energy. They installed their first project over there. What do you think about them? Now,
I
okay, Green Angel investor invested
we
into
I
them,
know.
yalla, yalla, yalla. But
Well, in fairness, we only invested a tiny bit right at the very beginning of their journey, and they quickly took off. I'm sure that my colleagues would love an opportunity to have invested more then and more since. They're going great guns, and we're very proud of them. I love their technology, partly because it's actually quite attractive to look at. I mean, it's smart, it's shiny, it's modular, it's sensible, it goes where nothing else is going to take up space. It doesn't compete anything on rooftops. I heard interesting stories as I was reading up about it beforehand, particularly in their early development phases, about all the things that you have to do before you put something on the roof. It's not just about attaching it firmly and sort of making sure the roof load is there. To put something on a rooftop, particularly in this country, is to make it sort of withstand intense processes like freezing and frost and snowfall, like incredible heat and sun and sun damage and UV damage. That those really sensitive, solar sort of power equipment kind of tubes had to be hit by lightning multiple times and had to be pelted by hailstones the size of golf balls just to pass their regulatory tests to be allowed to be put on a roof, and they're all the fun and games that we don't see when somebody is trying to develop something
insurance.
that we ultimately look at.
That was literally my job 12 years ago, 15 years ago, whenever it was, to develop solar projects on rooftops, especially. And there is also one very important thing, which is the insurance. So when you go to a bank and you want to get that financed, the bank wants to know, okay, fantastic, you're going to get the roof. What's the operation underneath that? Now, if you have multimillionaire tennis players showering themselves underneath, that is fine. Okay, we can insure that. If you have a fireworks production under that, how are we going to insure that? So that was a little bit of a problem. But I mean, I've encountered the number of characters as I was traveling all around Italy to find, let's say, the good roofs, like 10,000 square meters on, to do at least 1 megawatt size projects. Okay, a little bit larger. And you learn so much, obviously, what's also underneath those roofs. What are the production? I've been through logistics centers, food manufacturing business of any kind of sauce and oil possible and imaginable, and it was absolutely fantastic. But it is not an easy job. It is not an easy job. And what the technology, naked energy technology, brings, it is definitely that energy density that it is very attracting. That when you have a smaller roof, you can still have a higher output.
And what I took away from it is, to recap, they've got these lovely clear tubes which have got the solar PV panels facing the sun on the top, and then underneath they flow water so that the water is heated for hot water use. You're doing 2 for 1. But what I took away that I didn't realize is that solar PV gets less and less effective the hotter it gets. So actually running cold water through it that ultimately takes that heat away from the system, increases the efficiency of the solar by dualing it up with the water system. Genius.
Let me ask you something. Since you are from the great UK, you're definitely more cultured than I am on local indigenous legislations or not. Why are not all new housing developments, or commercial for that matters, being obliged to have solar on the rooftops?
Partly they are now. I have seen the latest rules go through that suggest that they do have to be. Now there will be exceptions in terms of size of dwelling, value, and various other things. But I have seen that has improved in the latest of building regs and government legislation. But also because welcome to the British community of lobbyists.
Okay.
These are all of the people that seem to have front row seats in government, parliament, to put their own interests forwards, and that includes house builders that simply don't want the cost and expense, you know, and others, you know, per infinitum, that seem to want to delay the progress and things. Because of course, house builders don't get to charge more money for a house just because it's got solar PV on it. It's the benefit to the home owners in the long run. You could even ask, are energy companies keeping this a bit quiet because they get to sell less energy if every house has got solar PV on it? But I won't go quite so far as to accuse them of that just yet.
But the grid needs that. The grid absolutely needs that. And several, I mean, where we live, there are, I don't know how many housing projects that they want to do, or they are actually implementing. The infrastructure underneath cannot cope with that. It is not ready to cope with that. They can even install 5 megawatts of solar into a bloody agricultural field. So that it is something that even probably energy company can tell you, we kind of need that, especially if you want to start to put down smart grids with, I don't know, car to grid system, home to grid systems. So anything to private to grid systems. They're going to need that, because the level of infrastructure the national grid needs to do to implement all of this, with all the data center booms that we lightly touched earlier, they need that. Plus, with the power of purchase that these developers have, the final cost per kilowatt installed, it is ridiculously low. We're talking about a point-something% of the overall project cost. So it is, but it is something that can go a long way also for the house. And I'm pretty sure that whoever is going to buy a house, whether it's the first house or their 11th house, if they have something that can make their house more efficient, environmentally friendly, and save some money in the long run, because let's be honest, the price of electricity is not going down. Whatever some guru of the kilowatt is going to tell you, it is not going down.
Well, I hope you're wrong on that. And actually, I mean,
it is not.
I hope you're wrong on all fronts. I'm sorry to say that I feel there's a lot of miscommunication and ignorance around with the general population when it comes to things. I've seen things on Mumsnet, for example, with people saying, I'd never buy a house with solar PV on the roof. I haven't quite understood why. I don't understand. But there are some misgivings and sort of ignorant perspectives out there, I believe. But listen, actually, there's a huge amount of work that has gone on in the national grid lately, stuff that we don't even necessarily know about. But 10 years ago, maybe less, they were saying that, you know, the amount of modernization that the grid is going to have to, do is just mind blowing. It will never make it. And yet, actually, they're reporting that they're pretty much nearly there. Actually, they've done a huge amount of stuff behind the scenes in terms of capacity, but also just upgrading the grid to be able to manage with renewable sources and things. So it's not done, but it's more optimistic there than I thought. I actually don't worry about energy capacity because I feel that can be dealt with fairly quickly in a sort of a market-driven demand commercial sense. I'm concerned about water, because there's just generally not enough water for these big housing developments that go up. And that is a very different commercial proposition without any of the infrastructure or the investment that's going into it that the National Grid's done. And I think it's going to be the next thing that starts to really bite.
Well, I completely agree with you. The underneath infrastructure that I was mentioning earlier, one part, it is obviously energy. The second, it is water. The UK especially has a sort of a water crisis, wastewater crisis. We briefly touched it with Ed in the last episode with Carbogenics. So that it is a huge issue. That it is a huge issue. Water quality, water consumption. I don't know what happened to you, but we received the water bill. It is doubled, and it is still something that I'm kind of conflicted there, because I see how people give very little value when they open the tap, when they, I don't know, run their dishwashers, or when they just turn on their showers for 10 minutes before getting inside. It drives me insane. It does.
You're a water Nazi in your house.
I am. My kids, my wife, they all hate me, like, very, very much. They're terrified now to have showers at home, but they still do. When I started, make it quick. But it is so on one hand you have that, and the only way to generate awareness it is to charge that, saying, okay, you consuming that much water, you're gonna pay for it. So maybe by increasing pricing, people will start to consume less water and start to value as the precious resource that it is. Okay. On the other hand, you have so many expenses getting, and the increase in taxes and increasing bills and increasing anything expenses, council taxes, they are going up, they went up, and then again the water one, electricity. So I mean, anybody can feel a little bit overwhelmed by this increasing cost. So I'm a little bit conflicted there.
I'd hate to see water bills go up, particularly where, because we've got energy bills so high at the moment as well. I think that would absolutely just finish everybody off. You mentioned the energy bill. Just let me jump in on that one, even though I'm going backwards slightly. Energy bills won't come down until we decouple the price of electricity from gas. But for the first time, I am hearing the government start to talk about doing that. There's enough pressure on them now to actually address that, given the fact that renewables and electricity has, skyrocketed in terms of its use and its capacity. And, gas is sort of more and more under control in terms of, limiting it, and particularly with new builds and heat pumps and industrial changes as well. It's looking better. So one thing I want to wish for from governments is to decouple gas from electricity prices, because if we can bring electricity prices down, I think you'll have the whole country on side with our renewable dream, because it will suddenly become cheap and accessible. And then you need to look at similar models for water in terms of being able to actually provide not just water coming out the tap and wastewater treatment, but sort of water management services up and down, flood prevention, agricultural sort
Catchment.
of use. Yeah, massively. And more, I'd like to see more reservoirs and things. They have started. There's one just being built just north of us shortly. But these things take bloody years, don't they? And the crisis has
How are
been
you going to
going on
build
for
the
a long time.
infrastructure? That is the whole point. You're going to build, I don't know, housing projects of 200, 500, 1,000 housing projects in areas where they don't have that capacity to handle, again, both
Or in
energy
areas
and
which are already
water.
floodplains and get flooded
Or,
twice a year.
yeah, they have too much water. Yes.
One crisis to the next, isn't it?
Exactly. So it is the whole management and also raising awareness. You touched that point. Raising awareness, it is extremely important. Like you mentioned, that group chat or whatever group, something that the mom is saying, I don't like solar for some reason. Why? What did it done to you?
Yeah.
What's the point? If you find your new home that already has solar on top of it and saves you. I was having drinks with a friend at their houses during the weekend, and they have the full package. They have solar, they have heat pumps, they have water catchment systems. I said, I am self-sufficient. I was so jealous. I am like pure man jealousy, nerd jealousy. He got everything, and he said, "I'm basically the whole system is self-sufficient."
Yeah.
In terms of water, they have the catchment system that goes for the toilet water and for the gardening hose, and then the solar plus. No, they don't have the battery yet, but the solar plus the heat pump basically manage everything. So in the year, when you do the year consolidate consumption, again, I'm using my hands like an Italian as I should. It is breaking even.
That's
So
lovely.
this
is a good
is
prepper mentality. I know one of my secrets is that, I like to think that I'm a bit of a prepper, but I'm a really bad one because I haven't actually done much in the world of prepping. But I read about this a lot. And of course, this desire to be self-sufficient, to be resilient, to not simply have to worry about costs and risks and, the security of supply, or to feel that you'd just be okay if everything just were to go black one day, like it did in Spain and Portugal recently. Of course, they had that massive blackout, didn't they?
Yes.
And they were very quick again. Renewables,
blaming renewables.
The green movement struggles with such a terrible PR campaign that it is immediately the whipping boy. It wasn't anything to do with that, but people become worried and nervous, and they don't like to then invest the money into things that they think are going to go wrong or expedite this sort of challenge that we have of blackouts and what about days when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, kind of thing. So yeah, people like to sort of build the resilience into their own homes, but I'm pleased that they do. I think this is a great future potentially if we can do more of that.
You touch a point that it is incredibly interesting, which is the PR lacking, let's say, in the renewable energy industry, or let's expand it also the climate tech industry has. The problem that the way I see it, I can be 101% wrong, but the way that I see it, it is that in the renewable energy world, there isn't a BP, there isn't a Shell, there isn't a OPEC plus in the renewable energy world. There isn't a cartel. Okay, if I can say this word. I cannot say this word.
Oh, you can say cartel.
I can say?
You're Italian. You can say. We'll listen.
I told you what I think it means syndicate, so don't let me start.
Cartel's fine. We have Greg at Octopus Energy. He's quite good on stage in terms of his narrative as to where he wants government to go. He's a big advocate for decoupling the price of electricity from gas as well, and that's interesting because actually it's that very mechanism that's making a lot of renewable energy companies quite rich right now, because they're selling something practically for free, at wholesale gas prices. So it's great to hear him be vocal on that issue. But you're right. We don't really have anything, despite what it is, climate tech. It struggles still to be aspirational, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like the actual. I think you even asked me this a long time ago. What's the sort of future that you can imagine in the world? Well, I think people really struggle to see a world where energy is abundant and cheap and clean, where the air is clear, where the water is clean and full of life, where biodiversity is thriving, but we're building really sound houses that are super comfortable and cheap, efficient, not free, and efficient to run. This is the future that we're aiming for, and in a weird way you could probably get AI to paint you a picture of this these days.
Oh, you can. Yeah.
But I don't feel that people sort of buy into that vision, and I certainly don't feel that anybody's out there pushing it. We're sort of a bit aimless with some of this stuff, if I'm honest. And the narrative has changed. It is, we in this climate tech world are increasingly under threat from, look what's happening in the States, look what Trump is saying, look at all the climate denial that's going on. It's getting people to turn around and say, is climate tech really a thing? Investor confidence is low at best. Mainly because you need long-term policy measures and a nice stable landscape for investor confidence to rise, and that's exactly what's been torn up all over the place lately.
But here we're talking about for, let's say, 20-25 years duration projects, like it is any wind or solar or any other. What about what is your gig, your bread and butter in climate tech startups? Is it still, do you still need that, let's say, long-term horizon and environment to be comfortable investing? Because I'm reading news that the secondary market is exploding, for example.
It needs to, because there's no movement anywhere else. The entire financial pipeline of early stage stuff. We're very good at inventing things. We're not very good at scaling things in this country. So the early stage pipeline is great. Even the UK government tax relief schemes for early stage investors to put money in, and the ecosystems that early stage startups experience is wonderful. But it starts to slow down and get increasingly hard the further up that chain you go as they scale and grow, to the point where a lot of companies, they're moving to the States, they're moving out of the UK because they're hitting a Series B round, a Series C round, and they're struggling to get funding here, and off they go. So there is some effort to change that just lately, and the latest changes do rob Peter a little bit to pay Paul in terms of trying to move some of the early stage support and put it later on down the pipeline. But generally speaking, it's a bit constipated. The secondaries that you talk about, that is a I've described it as constipated for a long time. I think it's brilliant, but
could have not been more clear. Yeah,
I shouldn't go down this metaphor, because the secondaries are kind of happening as a bit of a sideways rupture, and this is going to get disgusting very quickly.
Match it together with wastewater treatment, and we're fine.
Straight back into biogas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm glad if secondaries are taking
I
up.
promise I'll let you finish your thought.
So what we need to see, what I think we need to see, this is just my view. In the old days, 10, 20 years ago, we used to look at startups and think, well, I'll invest in them because they might be the next big Uber, they might be the next big Airbnb. You know, these guys could be the unicorns that displace the incumbent players that sort of grow and scale on their own back. Now, that's fine until you put it into the context of climate change, where we need scale and impact now, right now. We don't have 15, 20 years for the startups that we're looking at today to grow and to displace current market mechanisms and to, you know, to move the incumbents aside and sort of disrupt markets and things. They still want to, and that's very much their intention. But I don't see that we've got time for them to do that anymore. I think it's a necessity for them to now work with corporate players, with the incumbents, for the access to markets that they need, for the general sort of R&D and experience that they can get with these kind of big corporate incumbent players. And I think for the first time, corporate partnerships that have always been quite attractive. Everyone's wanted to work with startups, and startups want to work with corporates, but it's traditionally not really worked very well. It hasn't lasted long term, and it hasn't necessarily scaled the startup to the scale that we need to see with regards to the impact that needs to be felt. I think that's a crucial area now, and secondaries help. Secondaries are companies and VCs coming in and sort of, you know, buying up a full sort of cap table, if you like, and supporting that company to go a bit on that journey. But it's changing the landscape slightly for startups in this space. But I'll come back to the narrative point, because we talked about it all having a bit of a PR problem, and this is definitely something we're feeling. Companies used to dress up in a bit of a climate tech coat occasionally and knock on our door. You know, they were an efficiency gig, or they were doing something that was quite interesting, but they would pretend to be a climate company. And they'd done their carbon calculations. Yeah, okay. You know, there was an impact there. It's great.
Curious to know if it is correct.
But these days, okay. That would be on you. But
let me be picky. Yeah.
These days, they're not doing that so much, and I think it's for the better. They are having to talk about their technology as something that is better, that is currently out there at the moment, not just greener. Something that is cheaper, something that is often cheaper because of the use of circular materials or energy efficiency or fewer materials or something like that. And they're having to start to play a little bit with the big boys a little bit now. They're not just coming along saying, yes, but we're green, therefore we get to exist in this market. Yeah. And that's because the pressure of the narrative, the PR problem, they're having to find their way through. Now, it's not easy for them to do that. And it doesn't actually give them a huge sense of pride and value in what they're doing, because they are, you know, a proper climate tech founder is somebody that genuinely wants to bring massive impact to the world, and they want to do it fast and effectively, and they don't want to have to pretend to go around the back door by just being a cheaper alternative to what's on the table and not talk about their green credentials, because that's not who they are. But it is cleaning things up.
Doesn't that rings you a gigantic bell? Because the PR problem, if we want to go a little bit more granular, it is something that happened with a technology that we recently had on the podcast with biochar. They have been around for decades. Actually,
it has, hasn't it?
If we want to be precise, for centuries. Okay, I think I've read something about the Aztec or the Incas, that they were using biochar for their soil and other usages. So it is now in the climate tech environment. Okay, it is what, 15, 20 years that they've been on. Let's say in the last 10 years. Okay, that there's been a lot of talk of biochar in terms
Definitely.
of
For a long time
carbon sequestration.
Which it hasn't cut through.
It hasn't, even though it is ironically a semi cheap form of processing and final output and product. You don't need to have massive ventilators that gets air and then captures the CO2 and pipe it down 100 meters, 200 meters down into the soil, into the ground, or any other. There is one technology that I absolutely adore. I've been following them for 10 years. It's called Verdox. They developed this tech called electro swing adsorption that basically charges the air and separates the CO2 from the CO. But okay, I'm getting off topic. The problem with biochar, it is a PR problem. It is a huge PR problem. Is it the color? Is it because it looks like coal? So let's put some bloody natural colorant into
Maybe
that
it's
and make it
simply
pink.
been. Well, no, maybe it's just because it has been around so long. I mean, you look at your sort of VC investors out there; they like the new shiny things.
They do like the hardware stuff. Okay, they do, and I understand that it is an asset for the business. It is not just trading of a potential commodity as it should be, as biochar it is. But on the other hand, that also tells you the scale of that product, the scale that product can reach, which is absolutely humongous. I mean, Ed named, the anaerobic digestion, which is incredibly interesting, but it is still a niche if you think about it. How many anaerobic digesters there are in UK, in Europe, worldwide? The big one was the wastewater treatment, and we just mentioned the problem that several countries have on wastewater treatment. Okay, and it is not going to go anywhere soon because it is a global problem.
It can scale enough for wastewater treatment. It feels like it's a fairly small scale solution for a very large scale problem.
If it works, it is cheap, and it is your procurement strategy can be forecastable. You can say, okay, I'm not subject to absolutely enormous price swings because that it is my biomass, that it is the consumption, that it is my pyrogasification. Sorry, my combustion process that I made the biochar at the end. Okay, so it is fairly predictable. And we talk about the issues that there are in terms of supply chains and how difficult it is to procure materials, any sort of materials, okay, on the podcast. So if you are able to have that sort of predictability, I can tell you any procurement manager in the world right now that is listening will tell you, holy shit, I will pay good dollars for their predictability. And they do by hedging. But in this case, they don't have to do hedging. So that it is a huge PR issue. Where is the biochar members producer association?
Maybe you should start one.
So, but no, seriously, and the same thing also for the other tech, Samudra, for the algae, for the seaweed. I mean, that guy's robotic or non-robotic, MRV or not MRV. What they are doing, there are over 10,000 different varieties of seaweed. You can develop up almost anything from seaweed. So, and also that Europe has 1%, a little bit more than that, of seaweed production at global level. China, Asia is 90+%. But it is used also there for a variety of usage.
But there you go. You've got the commercial journey there all sorted in Asia because they've been eating seaweed for millennia and been much more familiar with it. Whereas you try and introduce it into the European markets and you're sort of playing around with niches of, health foods and milkshakes and smoothies. It doesn't feel as though it's. I mean, actually, the opportunities for packaging, I love. I think there's definitely massive commercial uptake there just in terms of scale because it does seem to be promising as a plastic alternative. But I wonder if it's going to be introduced into our, well, not just our diet, but our kind of culture in such a way.
It does, and again, it is a communication thing. Like the mom that didn't like solar, several companies they don't even know that they can make their products from seaweed. What kind of seaweed? And then you have a company like Samudra that tells, "Hey, we can build a farm for you with that particular seaweed that you're going to need. We're going to measure everything inside the water and outside of the water. We'll be able to also generate carbon credits for that that are going to help the redditivity of your investment. And on top of that, you're going to make your product in a sustainable fashion." I mean,
Yeah, I get nervous a little bit when we're talking about sort of, we've kind of claimed all the land in the UK for farming. Now it's time to claim the sea and create monocultural farms out there, because I cringe. I think, oh, that definitely can't be a good idea, can it? But I did like the idea that they can be sited and placed at the mouths of estuaries and water ways, so that they are there almost purposefully to mop up the agricultural runoff and the additional sort of fertilizers and things like that actually find their way into the water courses that cause algal blooms and things. I like that. Because then I feel as though they're actually being placed as a bit of a barrier, a cleanup job, which is nice. And certainly if it can be less monoculture and more on the regenerative aspect with regards to the oysters and various other things that can
ocean
really join in that, as long as it doesn't get so far out of scale, because then we've just swapped one problem for another.
Well, you kind of need that at a certain point. If you want to have that market penetration, okay, you do. I mean, like it is for any sort of climate tech that in UK has the problem when they have to go Series B, C, and onwards, they have to go to the States. The same applies also for production. You need to build up the scale economy to be able to drive prices down and get better products. So it does. There was one very interesting comment. Listen to this. I was surprised. One listener commented on the Samudra podcast, saying, "This is a fantastic thing. I don't understand why countries don't lease more proactively their waters, especially to landlocked country." So this guy was proposing to lease part of the coastal areas of the waters. And according to this guy, which I have to check the figures, but I was impressed. It was one of the most constructive comments we received on the podcast ever. I'm gonna frame it. It was
the general intelligence of our listeners is going up.
Yeah, so it made my day. It really made my day.
I mean, if you're looking at fishing rights, Francesco, we've been leasing our waters out to other countries for decades.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, why can't you do it for algae? And according to this, my new best friend, basically, he said that just with 2% of the coastal waters, you should be able to like withdraw like 50% of the carbon dioxide surplus that we have. Think about that, 2%.
It's not much, is it? And I do have
I have to check those figures. Okay,
that's fine.
We're not, yeah.
But I have a friend that's exploring the opportunities of putting all of these seaweed farms in and around the offshore wind turbines, not just to utilize the space that is there, that is currently sort of built up with concrete blocks and various other things under the water that you can obviously attach things to, but for an insurance play, because they act as natural, I don't know, how do you say it? Wave suppressants, in storms and surges Mitigation. And things like that. They prevent a lot of the deterioration and general sort of wear and tear on the wind turbine scenarios as well. So there you go. I mean, if it can, we need to think holistically, don't we? We need full systems thinking across all of this. And that is a challenge when you're relying on startups with all their very limited resources to come up with the solutions for the future, without the government kind of intervention, or without the big companies that have a much broader scope around lots of different systems and processes. Startups are going to really struggle to lend themselves so broadly. I mean, Joyita's fabulous because she just turns her eye to absolutely everything that falls in her path, and off she goes. But this stuff has to actually happen and be delivered as well, so it's a challenge.
It does. Yes, it does. I understand that. I mean, it is part of the game, right? It definitely it's part of the game. Well, this was a very interesting chat, I have to admit. I'm enjoying this. Yes.
I'll do anything if I get to drink wine. Same time next week.
Same time next week. Oh, Lord.
What have you got for your week ahead, Francesco?
What if I got for my week ahead? What have I got for my week ahead? I don't want to open. I'm certainly going to watch Wimbledon because there are 2 Italians in the quarterfinals. So, yes, it was first time in history until 2 days ago. 3 Italians were at the third
They
round.
don't fall over a lot, do they?
Oh, British humor at its best. British humor at its best. No, they don't. They're actually pretty good players. They really are good. Very different playing styles. But no, work-wise, well, we do have several projects. There is one very big that we've been working very, very hard. And then looking forward for the next episode with our not-to-be-disclosed guest.
Of course. Yes, I'll look forward to that one too. That is a little bit more of a interesting angle to explore and a crucial one. So I'm glad we're getting stuck into it. But can we do it justice in 45 minutes? No,
we can't. But that is the whole point of the podcast, right? Some nudges of wisdom, not from the Italian guy, especially.
Hopefully, yeah, we'll listen hard for those.
Emma, this was great. See you next week.
Okay, take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Raw Green. If you made it this far, you probably enjoyed it. So don't forget to hit subscribe and follow our podcast. It's an awesome way to support our community. At Obi, we're all about research, life cycle assessment, and the green tech innovation. Stay in touch through our socials or visit our website. Links are ready for you in the description. Catch you in the next episode. Ciao!